What's up everybody, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to be sharing 6 tips on how you can land a job as a software engineer at Google. These tips are really going to apply to any big tech company, by the way, not just Google. I worked at Google as a software engineer for a little over 2 years. I went through the entire application process to get into Google, so I have a lot of knowledge on this matter, and I'm really hoping that these 6 tips, which cover the entire sort of application process and application lifecycle, are going to be really helpful for you. With that said, let's dive into it. So the first tip has to do with when to apply to Google, or rather, what you need to be ready to apply to Google. I get a lot of people who come to me and who tell me, Clement, Google is my dream company, I want to be a software engineer at Google, but I'm not applying yet because I'm not ready yet. Maybe I'm not a good enough software engineer yet, or maybe I don't have enough experience yet, and therefore I am not applying to Google as of right now because I am not ready. And that always surprises me because truth be told, and this is tip number 1, the only thing that you need to be ready to apply to Google for a software engineering role is to know how to code well enough to take and pass the coding interview. So that's really all you need. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to trivialize getting into Google. I'm not trying to make it seem like it's super easy and anybody can do it. No, there's a lot of other stuff that comes into play, and I'm going to be talking about it in the following tips. But truthfully, as far as being ready to apply, all you need is to know how to code well enough to take and pass the coding interviews. I'm a good example of this. I applied for my job at Google right around 5 months after I wrote my very first line of code ever, and I had a few software engineering projects on my resume. I'll talk about that in the next tip, but all that I had otherwise was that I knew how to code well enough to take and pass the coding interviews. If I had told myself, I'm not a good enough software engineer yet, which I could have, right? I could have told myself I have no work experience, I'm not knowledgeable enough about all the areas of computer science and software engineering that exist, I would have never applied and I would have never gotten in to Google. So once again, tip number 1, if you know how to code well enough to take and pass the coding interviews, you are ready to apply to Google. This brings us to tip number 2. When you're applying to Google, no matter what application channel you go through, you're going to need to sell yourself. You're going to need to convey to the recruiters who are going through your application that you are worthy of being interviewed. And typically, or not even typically, but all the time, this is done through your resume. Now, I made a video where I went very much in depth into the exact resume that got me into Google. If you haven't seen it yet, I would encourage you to check it out after you're done with this video. I'll put the link in the description and in the comments below. But as far as this tip here goes, tip number 2, I think that all you need on your resume is, if you have no work experience in software engineering, I would say 3 software engineering projects on your resume. And if you do have work experience, let's say even just 6 months at a company, even if it's a not well-known company, I would say that 1 software engineering project to go with that work experience is going to be what you need to convey to those recruiters that you're worthy of being interviewed. Now, if you need software engineering project ideas, I also made a video on that. I'll put the link in the description and comments below if you haven't seen it already. I would really encourage you to check it out. But the key point that I want to make here, which kind of goes hand in hand with tip number 1, is that these software engineering projects, let's say you need to make 3, you need to have 3 software engineering projects on your resume because you have no work experience. If I take the 3 software engineering projects out of the 4 that I had on my resume that I was most proud of, right, the 3 that I think were really good, they took me, in total, about 3 weeks to make and finish. So what I'm saying here is that this is not something that should take you years, So this really goes hand in hand with the first tip of you're probably ready to apply to Google right now. Just take a few weeks to work on some cool software engineering projects and you'll be ready, right? Don't think that, oh, you need to spend hours and hours, days and days, weeks and weeks on these software engineering projects. That is not the case. Tip number 3. This one has to do with how to actually apply to Google. I get a lot of people who come to me and who tell me, Clement, I applied online. I submitted my resume online. I had a good resume. I had good software engineering projects. I know how to code well enough to pass the coding interviews, but I never got contacted. I must not be good enough to get a job at Google. No, 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 no. When you are applying online via the Google online application system, you are competing against millions, literally millions, of other resumes. That is not a good way or the best way to apply for a job at Google. Yes, it is doable. There are people, I know a few people, who got their jobs by literally just throwing their resume in the applicant pool online, and that just worked for them. But they likely got really, really lucky or had stellar resumes that sort of hit all the keywords and somehow managed to get through. What I would recommend is to contact a Google recruiter, a human being, directly. This will seriously increase your chances of actually getting an interview by like 400%. Okay, this is not a real statistic. I don't have any statistical knowledge on this, but it will really increase your chances. And so here, you might be asking yourself, but Clement, I don't know a Google recruiter. What do I do? And the answer is simple. There's this little website called LinkedIn. You may have heard of it. If you don't have an account on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend that you create one. It's really useful for this exact purpose. Go on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, there's a little search bar at the top. Type in the search bar, Google Recruiter. What do you think pops up? Google Recruiters. You will literally have pages and pages and pages of Google Recruiters. They're all smiling. They all look super friendly. They're all Google Recruiters. And what you're going to want to do is to spend a bit of time, and by the way, this is not going to be easy. I didn't title this video 6 easy tips to get into Google. I titled it 6 tips to get into Google. Maybe I could have put hard tips because they're not easy. You're going to have to spend some time, find Google recruiters who happen to have their contact information on their LinkedIn. A few of them do. A few of them have their email address on their profile, or a few of them will invite you to message them on LinkedIn. Even if they don't invite you to message them on LinkedIn, just go ahead and message them and tell them that you're interested in applying to Google. And here, once again, I made a video covering exactly how I landed my interviews at Google, which was by contacting 2 recruiters on LinkedIn and sending them an email. Go check it out. I'll put the link in the description and comments below. It'll show you exactly what I did and what you can do too. But so do that. Now, I would definitely say don't go and bombard 15 different recruiters with messages. Probably try to find maybe 3 or 4 recruiters who are maybe, located in the office that you want to apply to, although they don't necessarily need to be in the same office that you want to apply to, but, that could help. And see if you can find ones with their email, or if you can't, then just pick a few recruiters sort of randomly, send them a message on LinkedIn if you don't have their email, and wait to see if they reply. Give them a few days, 3 to 4 days. If they don't answer, maybe follow up, and if they don't answer after that, move on to another recruiter. You probably don't want to have 5 different recruiters answering you at the same time, which is why I would recommend sort of staggering them out in buckets of maybe like 2, 3, or 4, but that will more than likely lead to a positive result. The recruiters are going to contact you back, and you're going to be able to initiate the interview process. Bonus tip number 3.5. I bet you didn't expect there to be a bonus tip number 3.5, but you're super happy that there is one, so you're going to smash the like button right now. Once you message all of these recruiters, you might have one who responds to you and tells you, hey, whatever your name is, I'm actually not the recruiter who handles people of your level or of the role that you're interested in, but you can apply online, and if that doesn't work out, I can put you in touch with my colleague who does handle applications for people like you. If you get a message like that, and you can definitely get one because I got exactly that message and I covered it in the video that I mentioned right before, do not, please do not, I repeat, do not tell them, okay, I'm going to go ahead and apply online. No, do not do that. Okay, that's just going to bring you back into the whole competing with a billion resumes. No, tell them, hey, whatever your name is, I'm really interested in this position. I'm really excited about it, and I'd love to get the interview process started as soon as possible. Could you put me in touch with your colleague? And they're probably going to say yes, and you're going to have skipped that whole nonsense of applying online, which would likely not lead anywhere. Tip number 4. This is perhaps the most important tip of all. Although I'm probably going to say the same thing about the next tip, but this is a very important tip, and it's this. Once you've landed the interviews, you have your interviews scheduled, you have to realize that the only thing that matters from here on out for you to land that job at Google or at whatever big tech company you're applying to is your performance on the coding interviews. I'm going to repeat this. The only thing that matters at that point for you to land that job is your performance on the coding interviews. It doesn't matter what you have on your resume. It doesn't matter whether or not you went to college or if you got a few C's in college or who referred you if you got referred. No, the only thing that matters at that point is your performance on the coding interviews. Now this should make you feel two things. First of all, it should make you feel a bit empowered because you have the power. You have the power to control your own destiny in some sense. On the other hand, this should also make you feel a bit scared because that's a big burden, right? Basically, it's your performance on those interviews, and those very short, in the grand scheme of things, interviews, is going to be what dictates, or what determines, rather, whether or not you get the job. This is why it's very important that you prepare for the coding interviews a lot and very well. Now, of course, if you're not new to this channel, you probably know what I'm about to do. I'm about to shamelessly recommend that you check out AlgoExpert, my company, algoexpert.io. We've helped thousands upon thousands, literally, of software engineers land their dream jobs at companies like Google. We've been getting an insane amount of positive feedback lately. I would definitely recommend that you check it out. Use the promo code CLEM, C-L-E-M, for a discount on the platform and prepare for those coding interviews. That's tip number 4. Tip number 5, perhaps the most important tip of all, although I think I said the same thing about the previous tip, but nonetheless a very important tip, and that is communication. In the interviews, it is so important that you communicate very well. This is really one of the things that can make or break you in the coding interviews. I talk about this at length in one of our interview tips videos on AlgoExpert, and to be honest, I'll probably make a video about this on YouTube soon, but really it's so important that you communicate well. There are so many people, so many candidates who do very well in their sort of algorithms and in their coding, or at least decently well, but then who sort of mess up when it comes to communication, and it's really nothing too crazy. It's just that they don't voice their thought process. They don't talk out loud when they're doing their coding interviews. It's so important, and it can really make or break you in those coding interviews. You don't want to fail those coding interviews because you could have communicated better or more. Tip number 6, the final tip, has to do with what to do if you get rejected by Google. Maybe you've gone through the first 5 tips, you landed the interviews, you prepared for the interviews, and you still somehow didn't get an offer. That doesn't mean that you weren't ready, or that you were a bad software engineer, or that you'll never be able to get into Google. It's possible that you didn't prepare enough, but it's also possible that you did, and that you just got unlucky, or you just had a bad day, a bad couple of interviews for whatever reason. These interviews ultimately, even if you are very well prepared, are sort of hit or miss. And so the point here, tip number 6, is that even if you get rejected from Google, if you really do want to eventually work there, you should reapply in the future. While I don't have any personal experience with this, I know actually at least a handful of people at Google, of employees at Google, software engineers there, who got into the company not on the first try. They got into it after their second or even their third try at the interviews. So if you got rejected, or if you get rejected and you really want to work at Google, definitely reapply in 6 or 12 months. And even if you get rejected a second time, reapply a third time, because you might just get in then. Those are all the tips I've got for you. I really hope that you found them helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments below. And as I've said in a few of my other videos, these videos take a surprising amount of time and effort to make. Right now it's 3:02 a.m. and I still have to go edit this video, and then I have to wake up at 7 a.m. My life is awesome. I love it. And so all that I ask of you is, if you really did enjoy the video, to press that like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, to subscribe if you haven't already, to turn on the notification bell, and the whole 9 yards. With that, I'll see you in the next video.